You stupid bitch. Yeah, you're a stupid bitch. You stupid bitch. Welcome to another episode of Stupid Bitches Say What, the Aussie podcast about everything and nothing, but always with wine. And your hosts, Sean Hipkins and Skye Lee Collett.
This week we're talking true crime. Get chills as Sean recounts the events that unfold during the Strathfield Massacre, the horrific 1991 murder spree that shook the inner West Sydney town, while I aim to terrorise you with the story of the brutal murders committed in the 1800s by John and Sarah Makin, aka the Hatpin Murders.
Ooh. What are you drinking, Skye? What are you drinking, Skye?
I'm so glad you asked. I've just been waiting for that question all day. Shout out to my Stupid Bitches Say What class as well, of course. We're going to flog that horse, aren't we?
Damn straight.
Every week.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm drinking a naked. Of course, it's always a naked. And look, I'm not going to lie, the bottle's gone.
Is that a fuzzy mag?
What you will. It's a fuzzy mag.
Yeah.
I've never had a fuzzy mag before.
I've gotten that rosé for Vinny before.
Quite a tasty one, and that's why I saved some of it, because I wanted to use it on the podcast because I quite enjoyed it. Because sometimes rosés can be a bit,
too fucking sweet.
Yeah. So it's from the Hunter Valley. Oh, I live near the Hunter Valley. I didn't know it was from the Hunter Valley. And of course, it's a 2021 rosé, and it's got a really cute little sticker for people who are watching on Spotify or on YouTube. That's a cute little sticker with lots of little colours on it, and it is delicious. Yum, yum, yum.
Oh, very good. I'm glad you like it.
What are you drinking, Sean?
Well, I'm drinking a Shiraz. It's a Grove Estate. I'm not sure if it's a naked wine because this fucker had a cork. That's how fancy I am tonight.
Stop it. I can't remember the last time I had a cork. And do you know when I was drinking, remember that week in the beginning of this season when I was drinking that really old red that Aaron had dug up for me?
Yep.
And I was expecting when I opened them that they would have to have corks as well because they were really old. They didn't even have corks.
Still a screw top.
Corks are older than, what year was it?
I think that was 2016 or 2015.
No, it was way older than that. It was like 2001 or 2000.
Oh, Jesus. Well, it depends really what the brand is, because this is a 2017. This is a 2017 with a cork.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it depends.
That's what they want to do, isn't it?
And how fancy they want to package it. I think this may have been a Wine Selectors one, but it's a Grove Estate Hilltops Shiraz, 2017, and it is from Grove Estate, wherever the fuck that is.
I'm going to say South Australia. South Grove Estate just has a South Australian feel to me.
I hate to burst your bubble, but it's a New South Wales. A New South Wales batch. I did get your bodies in the barrel, sorry. It makes the wine taste spicy.
I will never not think of South Australia again without thinking of the bodies in the barrels.
Oh, well, I'll aim to distract you from that one in one of our future true crimes with another Adelaidean terrorizing crime. But this is nice, and I'm not usually a Shiraz drinker. They always they always pack the wine pack. You know, when you get like a mixed dozen or something, there's always a lot of Shiraz. But this one, Kitty, this one's actually really nice. I'm liking it. Maybe it's the age, 2017.
I thought you meant maybe it was your age. 45, 46 now, is it?
Oh my God, you stupid bitch. I'm still 44. Go fuck yourself.
You'll be 45 in a few days, though.
I will be.
Somebody's having a birthday.
In a week.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday. Well, we'll actually be able to talk about that in the next podcast because that'll be a day after. So I'll let you know what it feels like being halfway to 50.
Oh, I can't wait.
I know, me too. Actually, I can. So how have you been?
Halfway to 50?
Well, through the 40s, halfway through the decade of 40s. Yeah, like I'm 25. So how's your week? How's your week been, sugar bitch? And also, sorry to interrupt. We have spoken about our delivery and cutting everyone off, but I'm also drinking from a
This is me
stupid bitch
flogging the
wine
dead
glass.
horse.
This is me also drinking from a stupid bitch wine glass from Tai Tai. It's a stupid bitch Sean.
Aw, because you are a stupid bitch, Sean.
Thank you.
That's very cute.
So yeah, what's been happening in the world of Skye?
Look, work has been starting to get really crazy because at end of week 5, but the most exciting thing that I have to report on is that my cousin, Melanie, who I adore and I moved away from when I left the Central Coast to move back to Queensland, has just arrived today to visit me because we are having a wee little variety party.
A variety party? Did you say a variety show? A variety party?
I said a variety.
Oh.
A bridal party brunch
For
tomorrow.
who?
Moi. For me.
Yeah.
I'm the guest of honor tomorrow.
You are.
So that's pretty exciting. So most of this week has been consumed with wedding planning because I also haven't sent my invites out. To be fair, I've told every single person that it's happening, and I told them before Christmas the date.
Yeah.
I said, save this date, but I actually haven't sent the cards.
That's all right. As long as they know it's coming, that's all that matters.
Yes, and lots of people contacting me for accommodation advice, etc.
Well, we're booked. We've got our little cabin. It's a seagull cabin, I believe.
About pretty much every single friend that's coming from Brisbane is booked, has flights booked, has accommodation booked. I don't have shit booked.
Well, we don't have.
I'll sleep on my nan's floor.
We don't have our flights booked yet. I've got to do that this weekend.
Oh yeah, right. And just another thing, just to talk. No, you're gonna have to stop. Say to me, I can't talk about wedding stuff anymore. But I also had my dress fitting because my cousin was a dressmaker. So I tried on the whole frock today.
So you've got it all sorted and picked out.
I hadn't picked out because I hadn't picked out the first time we planned
Right.
it.
Of course.
So I've had it for ages, and Tyler keeps seeing it in its little box, and it's like, I want to have a peek. I'm like, hands off.
Yeah.
Get away from there.
Be patient, please. Yeah, fucking COVID fucked up that one, didn't it? The initial wedding. Twice. And your 40th too.
Among many other things.
True, very true. Oh, that's exciting. And we may go live tomorrow from the brunch, I think.
Oh my God, we have to. Yes,
Have to.
please, let's go live.
With our harem of stupid bitches.
Enough about me. Let's talk about you. How's your week been, you stupid bitch?
Enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think of me?
No, let's talk about me again.
What do you think of me?
I know, I love that. What's that from? Oh, that's from Beaches. That's what
it is, of course.
What do you think of me?
Enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think of me? So yeah, no, I've been good. It's been busy, but a fun week. Warning passing was a bit of a shock.
I forgot to even mention that. Vale, Shane Warne.
Shane Warne.
Right. I've only had a couple of sips.
Vale Sean Wayne. Sean.
Vale.
Oh God, Shane
Warne.
52.
Oh, I said to Tyler, I said, babe, in 10 years, I'll be 52. That could be me in 10 years. Like, how
7
shocking
years.
is it?
I know. I'm
very,
sure.
very shocking, very surprising. And, he was very loved by his children. And lots of, Australia, celebrities loved him. Everyone seemed to love him. I remember a tumultuous time,
Well, he was the bad boy of cricket, really, wasn't
yes, he was a bad boy. But it's just very, very sad. I mean, Tyler was absolutely devastated. I was actually on the loo and looking at my Facebook at about 7 o'clock on Saturday morning. And then I saw actually, Jules' husband had posted, oh my God, Shane Warne. And I thought, nah, fuck off, it's a hoax. So I immediately went on news just to see if I could, make sure it was hoax. And people were commenting under it, but I thought, oh, maybe it's like an inside joke thing with his mates, because I just couldn't believe it. And then I saw it, suspected heart attack, and I yelled out to Tyler from the toilet. I was like, babe, oh my God, Shane Warne's dead. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, babe, he's died of a suspected heart attack. And Tyler's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, baby, I'm sorry, Shane Warne's dead. And he was just in shock for ages.
Well, Vinny
he loves him.
Yeah, well, see, I'm not a cricket person, believe it or not. but I know of Shane Warne, obviously, but I've never really been like, oh my God, what he's an amazing bowler or anything like that. I don't know what that shit means. But I was
Big me. It's some type of cricket in the
Yeah.
sun.
see a batter or a bowler, catcher or a
He
pitcher.
travels to India a lot. They go to India a lot, don't they?
And, but it was quite sad, yeah, to learn that, you know, obviously a national icon, and of course it's sad when anyone dies, but still, yeah, it was a shock. But Vinny had received some sad news from home about an old colleague that he used to work with, who had passed sort of unsuspectingly, and you know, it was another shock. And he came out and he told me that, and then he went back into the room and
Poor Vinny.
Yeah, I know. And then he went back into the bedroom. About 15 minutes later, he walked out and he goes, if today can't get any worse, Shane Warne's dead. I was like, oh, what? Maybe.
Was he sad about that?
Well, I think it was sad. Yeah, it was shocked like me. Vinny's also
Yeah.
not much of a cricketer. But
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where you don't have to be a fan to actually really feel
To respect.
the shock and,
Yeah.
you know, a little bit of impersonal grief because you didn't know him. But I still think it was very sad. I was very saddened by it. And certainly we had people over that night, and every man who came over was mostly, you know, all the boys got together as soon as they greeted each other. Warning, you know.
Warning,
It was very much like
had a little wake.
every drink was a cheers to warning, and it was just like a camaraderie with all the blokes, like, you know, if you're a dude, I guess, who follows any type
Or
of
into
sport.
cricket, really.
Yeah.
Plenty of
You,
females into the crickets.
True. Thanks for picking me up on that. You are absolutely right.
My mother is, I don't know if she really is anymore, but she was huge into cricket, and she's totally insured. I never really gave a shit. And yeah, I didn't either. I just took too long. But she used to always go to the one-day test matches, the one-day matches, the test matches. She loved Imran Khan. Loved him.
Well, look, Jake and Tyler and Dad just can sit there and just watch it. I'm just like, it's just so there's
repetitive,
happening, and it goes for so long.
I agree.
Like,
I agree.
don't understand it, but
Yeah.
I guess it's like soccer. I don't really get soccer either. It's just the ball going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And like in an 80-minute match or however long the game's run, they might only ever score like one goal each.
I know.
Sometimes not even
That's
that.
it.
I'm just like, I don't get how it's
That's exciting. Yeah. And they get so fucking passionate about it too, especially in Europe, you know. Like, give me male gymnastics or Dancing with the Stars any day.
Male gymnastics.
That's the best. Oh, those figures.
You just want to see the butts.
Oh, and the shoulders and oh. We also had St. Patrick's Day this week. One of the first in a while that we actually haven't had a few beers at. Just shit going on, but next year it's on a Friday, so we'll be taking the day off and getting shit-faced. And I suggest you do the same.
We are going to join you. Yeah,
Good.
We're going to join you for that because I would like, and I've thought about it, and I meant to post something to on Facebook, but I did also have, and maybe I should share this on the Instagram. But there's a video of me when I first moved down to the Central Coast on St. Paddy's Day. Trying to pour a can of Guinness in honor of St. Paddy's Day for Vinny, and I filmed it for Vinny, and I sent it to him, and I put it on Facebook, and I was like, am I doing it right, Vinny? Am I doing it right? And then I proceeded to drink it, and I thought it was quite amusing, and I thought,
I did see that come up in the memories. That would have been good to have posted yesterday.
I was going to share it, but then I thought I don't want to make St. Paddy's Day about me.
Totally. St. Paddy's Day is about us. That Instagram thing is about stupid bitches saying what. But in the spirit of St. Paddy's Day and our Irish family and friends, I want to do a shout out to Val in Ireland, a very dedicated listener, sends lots of messages of support. So hi, Val, and thank you for staying tuned into our Stupid Bitches podcast on the other side of the world.
Thanks for listening, Val. We love you.
We appreciate you. So we've got Survivor and maths, but maybe we should save that for our pop culture intro chat.
Well, look, there's been a lot going on in maths.
There has been the nude photo scandal. Have you seen that yet? That dinner party?
I haven't seen the episode, but I've heard a little bit about it. But I've pretty much tapped out of Survivor too because I haven't really watched it since Khan went. I've seen who's gone because I've been following your spoilers through the group chat, the page.
So close to the end. How can you tap
I
out
know,
now?
and I know you're very much on Sam's side. You're very like go team Sam. Did Mark go? Did they boot him last night?
No.
Who went last night or the night before?
So they had when Jesse went.
I saw Jesse. I didn't watch the episode, but I saw on the update. So I was like, "Yeah, fuck you, Jesse. I hate your gut."
After that,
he got rid of Croc.
Yeah, they voted out Shay. Then they voted out. Then they voted out Geordie. Then they voted out KJ in a double tribal with Geordie and KJ. Then they voted out Michelle. So Tyler got voted out.
A new Michelle. So Chris is still there.
She's still there. But those 4, when they got voted out, they all went to purgatory.
I read that as well.
And then they had to compete. And then 3 of them came back into the game. So I'm just hoping to God that those 3 fucking people that have come back can get in there and split the couples up. I want Mark to be blindsided so Sam can stand on her own 2 feet again without having to.
She's never going to dog him though. She would never do that.
Oh no, I know.
So they're going to have to blindside both of them.
Yeah,
I think he'd do it to her. I think if that he could stay in the game, I think he would absolutely do it to her. He's quite ruthless.
I could see him putting forward a case to her, saying like, "I've got a better shot at winning this than you, and I need you on the jury to give me your vote," and blah blah blah.
Yeah. He's a bit of a wanker.
She'd probably go, "Yeah, okay, dolls. Yeah. You're a man. I'm a woman." So, okay, well, we'll save the nude photo scandal until after you've watched the episode, so we can get really down and dirty into that combo. Because I have had discussions with people at work who watch it, and my opinions don't match a lot of others.
Also, I need to say that I know someone who knows Olivia in real life.
Shut the fucking front.
Found that out today.
Nice.
So yeah, we'll save that for our maths discussion.
Okay, can I just ask one question? How well do you know this person? Is it someone through work that you've just met?
I know her really well, so it's Mel's best friend.
Wow.
And she used to work for her dad.
Okay, great. I want you to get all that shit together and get that ready for next week.
I don't think there's much more to it, though. I think that's basically my claim to fame.
Don't you have any like inside goss or anything?
Let me see what I can get.
See what you can die.
I'll touch base with it. I'll be like, Saz.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So, should we get into our murders? Who is going first this week? I don't mind. I know that I had a lot of. Well, after listening to last week's episode, I know I spoke a lot, so I'm happy if you want to go first.
Okay, and I'm actually feeling quite pissy from that first glass of wine, so it's probably good if I get it out of the way because I'm doing a lot of my happy house.
It'll be full of Halford.
So I might as well get it out there. Okay. So the Hatpin Murders. I'm going to take you back in time, listeners. This is a really creepy one. And we're going to go way back to the 1800s, which is a bit of a change of pace for us because we haven't done anything really old. I mean, when I did the murders in Perth, and now I've just lost the name. What was the name of the husband and wife?
I know that's what you mean.
The Bernies. Yeah. The Bernie murders.
That was like 70s or 80s?
Yeah, it was. I think they've met in the 60s and then they murdered in like 70s, 80s and stuff like that. Anyway, so I'm going to go back to the 1800s. So there's an infamous murder house in McDonaldtown in Sydney. So I know you're thinking to yourself, McDonaldtown, is that a real place in Sydney? Because I certainly went, what the fuck is McDonaldtown?
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it.
Near Sydney. So I was like, is that a place? Anyway, so I Googled it. Surprising enough, it's no longer a place.
Right.
The murders ruined it, is one person's opinion.
It sounds like a theme park for Ronald.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. That's what sprung to mind. So it's an infamous murder house in former McDonaldtown, now known as Erskyneville. Okay. I know the name, but I'm not sure if that's the right pronunciation, but I certainly have been there. So it was a real working class community where a contractor or a worker attended the property. He was doing some maintenance on a clogged underground drain, and then he found it blocked. And then when he realized what the blockage was, he realized that he was staring at the remains of 2 infant babies.
Oh.
Yeah.
In a drain.
In a drain. So the occupants had moved out prior to the bodies being found, and after the police ordered that the backyard be exhumed, the remains ended up totaling 12 infant bodies. Some believe it's 13, and they were found across the McDonald town. I think there was 10. No, there was about 9, I think, bodies found at the McDonald Town property, and then there was other properties where other bodies were found, and that was in Redfern and Chippendale.
And all infants too.
All little tiny babies. So John and Sarah Makin and 4 of their daughters were arrested shortly after the bodies were found. They were now residing in Chippendale. The daughters were released not long after that, and Sarah and John went. The children were quite young, so they were early teens to late teens.
Yeah.
One was as young as like maybe 10 or 11, but ended up being witnesses in the trial that happened later on.
I was going to ask, like when you said that the daughters were murdered, I was like, come on, if they're young, is it just an old 1800s thing where everyone just got fucking locked in and killed because of it?
I think so. The law was very, very different back then, which is what I found so intriguing. Because, and then I ended up finding this old microfilm article from the 40s, and it was a newspaper article that was printed in the 1940s that was sort of like a feature piece based on the murder. So, 50, 60 years after the murders had been committed, someone was writing about them. And it was on microfiche.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know microfiche as well, I think, is that same thing.
Yeah, so like I searched for it and it came up and I could actually view the article, like the old school article from 1947 or something like that. It was quite cool. Yeah,
and it's fish with a PH, isn't it?
I actually don't know the answer to that. But I'm sure you're right.
Well, let's
it's believed that the Makins sought a profit by taking babies in exchange for childcare payments. And in the end, they found it much easier to murder the tiny infants and continue to claim the monies, and in most cases deceive the parents that had entrusted their children to them.
So it's not even their babies.
No.
Not that makes it better, but yeah.
So it's an institution that went on for decades, known as baby farming. So if you Google baby farming, you'll actually see that this is what happened back in the olden days. People, particularly illegitimate children, like mothers, unwed mothers who ended up with a baby and they had no means of supporting them.
Shaming the family.
These women had a decent job, quite often they met these men that they ended up having a child with in their places of employment. So they had a job to go back to where they could make some sort of money to get by, but they couldn't fend for themselves with a child. There was no daycare. No, unless you had a mother or grandmother or someone to look after your baby and have family. You were fucked,
and also society and what government fucking enforced on people who had children out of wedlock and all that shit. It's fucked,
exactly.
isn't it?
So and it was alleged, this is the really gross part, well, not gross, this is the really awful and sad part, that the babies were stabbed in the heart with a large needle, and the killings were then dubbed the Hatpin Murders. A lot of the information that you see online is circumstantial, though, and quite opinionated, because, again, back then you didn't really need evidence to convict someone of a crime. And there is a few accounts of people saying that they weren't tried fairly. I don't know, if you've got
that
almost
many
12 to 13 dead infant bodies, and people who the people who were involved certainly didn't birth those children themselves. They were in the care, those babies were in their care.
And if they died of disease, why would you stuff them down a drain pipe or flush them down the toilet or whatever they did?
That formed part of their defence in the end. And again, a different time, people probably didn't have the money to go and, was there even a real process back then where you had to notify people about a death, and especially a small child, but I guess if it wasn't your baby.
And if it's in an institution, you'd let the parents know your child has died of the Black Plague, pa.
Yeah, that's it. And as I mentioned, the daughters ended up testifying against them at trial. But one of the babies, Horace Murray, His young mum was only 18 when she placed an ad in the Sydney Morning Herald in 1892, seeking a lovely family environment for her illegitimate son. So she knew when she placed this ad that she was giving her baby up.
Yeah.
She was no longer able to care for him, but she offered to cover his expenses under casual terms that she would be allowed to visit her son. So this says to me that she had a place, she was working. If she could cover those expenses, and she didn't have a husband to do that for her, she was in some sort of employment. You know
and
what I
that
mean?
employment back then wouldn't have been office work and stuff like that. It would have been fucking women in.
It could have been, or she could have been in the factory.
In
Yes, she could. Oh,
factories.
you're thinking that she's a prostitute. Is that what you're
No,
thinking?
I'm thinking factories as well, like factory type work back in the 1800s.
Yeah, she could have worked in a shop, you know. But yeah, you're right. It could have been anything, but it wasn't enough. It obviously wasn't sufficient money for her to be able to look after a baby.
It's also around the time though, like, and I mean, right up to the 60s, where women were in the home when they were a mother. They didn't have a career and all that shit. Yeah.
So she was probably flat sharing with a bunch of girls, and she couldn't just bring a baby in, and you know, all that stuff. I'm thinking of Love Child right now. You know Love Child, although that this situation predates Love Child. Have you ever seen Love Child?
No, I haven't.
Where they go to that. It's an Aussie show. Have you not seen it?
No.
Aussie show where they have children in the 60s and they're teenagers and they get sent to this you know, hospital, and they have this wing of the hospital where they give birth to the babies and then they adopt them out. So the girls go there when they're just starting to show and have the babies there, and then they get them taken off them, and it's really traumatic.
And it's all fucking based on religion as well. That shit.
Yeah, it's got heaps of stars in it. Like, it's actually a really good show. You'd like it. Anyway, so she put this ad in the paper. She was going to cover his expenses, and she wanted to visit the baby. So John Makin denied all her requests and had a range of excuses every time she tried to make contact with him and tried to see the child. She was provided a different address from the McDonaldtown address that most of the babies, the dead infants, were found at. So she approached their address one day, trying to make contact with them. No one was there. They'd moved on, no forwarding address. So that was it. She handed this baby over, and she never saw the baby alive again.
So the baby was probably killed pretty quickly.
He was one of the babies who was found, they believe, based on identifying a piece of clothing that she had handmade for him and she had given over, and they identified it was blood stained.
Because there's no dental records or DNA testing and shit. Yeah,
exactly. But it was pretty cut and dry. And then the daughters went on to testify, and they were able to pinpoint, you know, some of the babies, because they helped look after the babies, but they didn't know anything about what happened to the babies. They just believed they'd gone back to their parents, allegedly, whether or not they had something to do with it. They were children.
And you wouldn't think the parents would be saying, "Oh, we're going to bring in the baby for the killing."
We'll just stab this baby.
Yeah.
So based on the information they pieced together from the daughter's witness accounts, they determined some of the identities of some of the babies. But there was also lots of other parents who came forward and said, I had, you know, give my baby over to this family, and I've never seen the baby again. And so that's how they pieced together, you know, which babies were missing and things like that. But it certainly would have been done to today's standards, accurately confirming,
exactly,
identity and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But both Makins were sentenced to death by hanging. So John Makin received his punishment in 1893 at the age of 48. So they hung him like full on. Hey, that was back in the day where they strung you up.
Yeah.
Sarah's sentence ended up being reduced to life imprisonment, though, with hard labour, which I loved. And I didn't have time to research this a little bit because I'm just curious. Back in, 1893, she would have went to prison. What life imprisonment with hard labour would have been.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been pleasant. It wouldn't have been pleasant. It would have been rough.
You know what I picture?
Wished you were dead, I think.
Yeah. I picture, you watch A Handmaid's Tale, don't you? Yes, of course you do. You know, when they go to what's the zone they send off the fucking handmaids that have been too naughty in that toxic area, the radiation place. And they have
where they end up dying from the radiation.
Yeah,
I've forgotten what it's called.
Yeah.
Something lands, or it's something the lands.
Badlands or something. Yeah, they send them off to that. Like that. That's what I picture. Yeah. But obviously no radiation.
Yeah. Well, so she served 19 years in prison, and she died 7 years later at the age of 72. And believe it or not, her occupation was a midwife.
Wow.
That's what she did for work at night. And then she ended up killing all those poor little babies.
Could you just be that callous with just a baby? Like, it couldn't even kill a puppy or a kitten, let alone a fucking
I
infant.
know, right? It's just so awful. And then there's accounts and reports that he was the ringleader and she wasn't, but they were exactly the same age too.
Yeah.
They were both born in. Oh shit! Where did I put it?
Look, I'd have no doubt back in those days as well that the man would be the one that led the fucking show.
Of course, that's the way of life back then. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's always sad to me, like when you hear of especially infants, but also, you know, whenever little children get murdered, stuff like that, you always just think, you know, that child could have actually grown up to have done some amazing shit that we will never know.
Yeah,
you know?
it's just awful. It's just such an awful thing to do. But baby farming was very common back in those days. And you know, I'm pretty sure that a large component of the time, it wouldn't have ended well. If you're giving up your baby to someone because you're desperate and in exchange for payment, it was never a good scenario well in most cases. But it did have an effect on legislation. The case of Sarah and John Makin raised the awareness of the institution of baby farming, even though it was known that it was happening. And
it was public now. It was there.
Poor people did it, like it made the government step up and say, we need to do something about this. So the New South Wales Legislative Assembly initiated the Children's Protection Act of 1892 to bring the care of orphaned and destitute children under state control. So a big piece of legislation. Arguably, is it effective, and even in this day and age, because we all know of the horror stories that we hear in that institution to this day. So it brought in some legislation to put some orders in place and some law around it, but it's a process that certainly definitely to this day needs a lot more funding.
And you're right, like when you say that, it's never, in most often and not, especially back then, handing the baby over is never going to turn out into a good scenario, especially if they're going to an institution. If they're not getting murdered, there's going to be abuse, whether it's sexual, physical, mental. It's never going to be nice. And poverty stricken, and
you could swing a cat and hit 1,000 stories of horrible cases of institutionalization in those years, and even now things have gone horribly wrong.
They weren't eating well and all that stuff. It's sad.
Yeah,
terrible.
It's horrible. But so that's my true crime story. A bit awful, but it was interesting to go back in time, certainly.
Yeah. It's I tried to, when you said to me that yours was set in the 1800s, I thought, oh, okay, I'll try and follow suit. And I had tried to set, and I kept searching for like a Sydney, the Rocks area in Sydney. I thought there's got to be some sort of true crime from that sort of region back when that was all fucking industrial and shit like that, but I couldn't find anything. So
do you know how I came across it? Because I just searched, there's actually a murderpedia, like a Wikipedia for murderers.
Yeah.
And I the only reason I came across it is because I was searching, when we first started true crime, the most shocking murders in Australia and New Zealand. And then I ended up getting to that Murderpedia site, and they list them in alphabetical order because Mark Chopper Reed's on there.
Right.
And he
you have to send me the link. You have to send me the link.
So it's all, and then also that's how I had a very brief knowledge of the bodies in the barrel. Going into it, because I stopped myself because you said you were going to do it. I was like, oh, I can't read this because I want to be shocked when you present it.
And were you shocked?
Yeah, I was totally shocked and just totally horrified that they didn't get the death penalty because it was no longer legal, because they should have been killed, I think. They
just accidentally killed or something. Just put them in a pit with fucking other mass murderers and shit that can actually then just beat the crap out of them.
Yeah, but let's talk about the Strathfield Shopping Centre massacre. Another horrific thing.
This is
Plaza.
All right, so I'm going to go back in time as well, but not as far back as yours. Probably about 100 years after yours. So,
what's the 90s?
It's the
Seems
90s.
like a very long time ago to me.
Well, it was. I was 14 at this stage. But on 17th of August 1991, a massacre would take place at Strathfield Plaza that would result in the loss of 8 lives and 6 physically wounded people. Wade Frankum was a 33-year-old part-time taxi driver who went on a rampage that afternoon, unleashing terror on the shoppers, families, and the staff at the plaza.
So awful, so
It's horrible.
senseless.
In a complete,
It's very similar to the Martin Bright, like just
you have
so like out of the blue and just no unexplainable.
yes. It was completely random
Vengeance.
act. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
funny that you say that because I have that in my notes as well. There is quite a few similarities in the Martin Bright, in the Port Arthur Massacre and the Strathfield Massacre.
I guess
So-
it takes a certain person to kill on that kind of scale,
But even-
too, doesn't it?
Even some of the stuff, like there's a lot of uncanny shit that is very similar. But you'll be able to pick on that as we go through it.
You know, I always wished that I did criminology. Like when I was
Me
in high
too.
school, I was very obsessed by stuff like this and forensic science, and I always wished that I had done it. And now that we're getting back in true crime, I mean, I know we're only surface digging.
Yeah.
We're talking about like stuff that we research from facts and things like that. But I do find it incredibly interesting.
That's
I'd love
so
to,
interesting.
you know,
Yeah.
do more studies on it.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's never too late, Skye.
It's
Probably
like
going to be
never too
working
late
till you're
to get
65,
education.
67, or if Abbott had his way, 70. Anyway, so yeah, it was a
Fuck you,
complete.
Abbott.
Yeah, I know. It was a complete random act of violence that shattered the community and would become known as the most shocking and violent act in Sydney's. One of the most shocking and violent acts in Sydney's history. The carnage actually happens over a short 10-minute period.
Yeah,
with the
it was
entire-
very small, wasn't it? It was
Very
just-
small window, but with the entire event lasting 15 minutes. So at approximately 1 p.m., Frankum enters the plaza with an army surplus duffel bag, Martin Bryan, containing a 50-centimeter Bowie knife. And a Bowie knife is like, like a Rambo knife. You know,
The really
Rambo-
long ones and thick ones
Thick
with
blades.
a serrated edge on one side and a really sharp.
The only difference is I don't think this had the serrated edge, but it's that real thick, broad blade
Yeah.
and a really long, 50 centimeters. It's not nearly a fucking machete, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, and a semi-automatic. He takes a table at a cafe called the Coffee Pot in the plaza, where he sits and drinks numerous amounts of coffee while he contemplates
So
his
much
next
like
move. Right,
Martin Bryan.
in a cafe with his duffel bag.
And sorry to interject, but was this what was the Martin? What was the
He was 95.
Okay, so the weapons rules hadn't come into play yet. This was
No,
before. Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And you wonder if, this could be completely out there because I don't think Martin Bryant was that. I don't think he had that high an IQ. But if he'd seen this murder and this
On
was some
telly or
inspiration,
something, and had
for
become
it.
obsessed with it or
Yeah.
inspired. Yeah.
some inspo.
Who knows?
Yeah. So he sat in the coffee pot drinking numerous amounts of coffee. Later on that day, Roberta Armstrong, who was affectionately known as Bowie to her family and friends, she's a shy 15-year-old girl who's gifted in ballet and an accomplished flute player. She meets up with a friend.
I know how this goes.
I know, I'm getting goosebumps on my leg. She meets up with a friend at the coffee pot. They sit there and they chat and laugh as they talk about stuff that 15-year-olds talk about, having no idea that her would-be killer was sat directly behind her.
Oh,
At around
Wow.
3:30 p.m. and without any provocation and without any warning, Frankum pulls a large knife from his bag, turns around and brutally and repeatedly stabs Roberta in front of her friend. Roberta obviously didn't see it coming and was then therefore
had
completely
no
defenseless.
ability to defend herself.
Herself.
That poor friend as well. Imagine all those
Yeah.
people in that place who witnessed that.
It's terrible. Imagine
They'd
sitting
never
there
recover from that.
at all. Imagine sitting there just talking to your friend, and next minute some psycho just jumps up from behind and just starts brutally stabbing the person while you're having a fucking
It's horrible.
yeah. He kills her, leaving the knife in her body, and then he pulls out the semi-automatic and just opens fire randomly at people in the cafe. And so, as you could imagine, people have no idea what's going on, and the shopping center is packed. So is the cafe. So it's just chaos.
He
in a
kills
short,
another young one too, doesn't he? Like
he
it's almost
does.
like he had a problem with young people because
Well, I
there was
think
a
it was
few
just,
young people.
it's just completely random, I think. So in that
Mm.
short space of time, he then kills 61-year-old Joyce Nixon and her
Yep.
daughter, 37-year-old Patricia Rowe. He then fires at and kills the cafe owner, 51-year-old George Marvis, and then takes the lives of 47-year-old Carol Dixon and her 17-year-old niece, Rachel Milburn.
Right.
Shop owners describe the sound as a stack of metal trays hitting the ground. So they don't know what the fuck's going on. They can just hear this, all this commotion. A woman runs into the news agency screaming, "There's a gunman, there's a gunman." And confusion really sets in. Like, what's going on? How many gunmen? What gunmen? Where are they? Shop owners have no time to shut the stores and to get themselves into safety. So they just get their customers. So not just the news agency, but a lot of shops get all their customers to take cover at the back of the store. That's all they could do. The news agency owners hired 10 customers in their 2-meter square back office. So they're all stood in a 2-meter square back office, petrified as fuck, waiting like cattle, I'd imagine, for the slaughter. People are starting to hide behind anything that they can find, fucking magazine racks, whatever.
Yeah.
Bodies are laying on the floor throughout the plaza as the gunman continues to fire at people. Frankum then makes his way through the plaza and shoots and kills 51-year-old Robertson Can Hockboon, and injuring many as he continues the rampage. One of the shoppers, Greg Reed, a 41-year-old local resident, started trying to track the killer to see if he could be taken down, to try and follow him, see where he was going. He spots him walking through the plaza and imitating a commando. So kind of like fucking Stallone again. And Greg sees him and then starts running up a ramp to the next level of plaza and notifying people. He notices that Frankum isn't shooting at people who are laying down. So I don't know what that's about, whether he thinks he's already shot them or he sees them as pathetic, or I don't know, or he's out there hunting. So he doesn't shoot at people who are laying down. So Greg starts telling people to get on the floor. There's a gunman, just get on the floor. Frankum, the gunman, sees Greg alerting people and then marks him as his next target and follows him up the ramp, firing shots at him, but missing. Greg continues alerting people, but in the 10 minutes that have passed at this stage, 7 people are killed. Greg continues making his way up the ramps in the shopping plaza and ends up out on the rooftop car park. He alerts shoppers who are in their cars and who could hear the noise but had no idea what's going on to lay flat in their car seats and that a gunman's on the loose. He runs up to one woman who is packing her car with the shopping and he says to her, "Get in the car and lay down, there's a gunman coming." The woman turns to him and replies, "It's too late, he's right behind you." Oh, that just gives me so much shivers. Greg turns around and Frankum's about 20 meters away from him, pointing his gun at him, and they're looking at each other straight in the eye. The gun's poised and ready to shoot, but he doesn't fire right away. And after a few seconds, which I'm sure for Greg felt like fucking hours, Greg dives to the side behind a car just as Frankum shoots at him. Bullets fly through the air, and as he's diving through the air, one of the bullets actually connects with Greg's feet as he dives to safety. At the same time, the news
agent... Isn't it funny how some people survive and some people die?
Just don't. Right? Where you get that initial thing, like that girl had no idea, could have done nothing.
Yeah, she had no chance, whereas he was in front of the guy and the guy was going to shoot
locked
him
eyes
and
at each
still
other.
Managed to survive and get shot in the foot.
That 1 second, split second jumped at the exact right time and got shot in the heel. Yeah. So around the same time this is happening, the news agency owner notices that the scene in the plaza has gone quiet and he slowly makes his way out of the office. And he goes out the back alley where he sees the gunman's on the roof of the car park. He's on the roof looking out from the car park, and firing at people on the streets and at the train station across the road. He doesn't hit anyone. The gunman then turns his focus onto this employment center that is connected to the car park, but the doors are locked. So he tries to shoot the locks out of the doors, but he fails. It's at this stage he's out of options, and it's obvious it's something that he hadn't planned from start to finish, and he was forming ideas as he went along, just like Martin Bryant. You know, they've done the carnage. The carnage was to do the mass shooting in the area, Port Arthur or the fucking plaza. But after that, there's no plan moving forward. An unsuspecting woman is now in her car driving through the car park. Frankum runs up to the car, points the gun at her, and gets in the passenger seat. He holds the gun to her face and tells her to drive to a nearby suburb and takes her as a hostage. Lady's terrified, driving her car with a semi-automatic 10 centimeters from her face, thinking to herself, this is it. My time's done. I'm up. I'm fucked. What do you do?
No way out of this
You got a seatbelt on and you're behind a fucking steering wheel.
Yeah.
Then out of nowhere, Frankum breaks down and is in tears as he gives what she describes as a heartfelt apology.
Oh, boo fucking who, mate?
Boo fucking who. Saying he was really sorry and he continues to cry. You could just imagine what the fuck is going through this woman's head. You know, you just be thinking like, what the fuck? Like you've got a gun pointed at you. You've been told to drive here. You're a hostage. Next minute he's crying. You're like, this guy is a fucking psychopath. What the fuck's going on?
Anyone who can murder a fucking 15-year-old girl,
brutally stabbing
like that, doesn't deserve sympathy. I don't care what.
Oh yeah, there's no sympathy at all. No sympathy. But then in a strange turn of events, after he starts crying, he then gets out of the car, walks across the car park, kneels on the ground, points the gun at his head and shoots himself.
Yeah.
So by the time he shot himself, the whole event has taken 15 minutes. 8 people are dead, including the gunman.
Including the car ride, 15 minutes including the car ride and everything that happened to Greg. Oh, that's crazy, isn't it?
Isn't it? That's just like bang. 15 minutes. It's not even half a Simpsons episode, you know?
Yeah.
8 people are dead, including the gunman, and many others are injured, both physically and mentally, traumatized and shocked from what's just happened. So as you can imagine, after the event, the police have now come in and everything's been calmed down. People are getting out of the shopping plaza, getting taken away in ambulances and whatnot, but the community want answers. What the fuck happened? Why did it happen? You know, how can you feel safe if you can't feel safe when you're doing your groceries?
Yeah.
You know?
How many more guns are out there?
How many more guns are out there? An investigation then takes place into the life of Frankum, who had no police record or any history of violence. Many people who were known to Frankum volunteer themselves for an interview, including the many prostitutes he would frequent. So what was uncovered was that he had mild dyslexia that was never corrected and hindered his ability to succeed. He was being treated for depression and was known as a failure in life who thought he was much better than what he was, which I don't really like that statement. I just think that's a terrible thing to sort of say. And obviously he's a terrible person, but there's people who just aren't going to be great at shit, never going to strive at shit, but to sort of pin that sort of sentence on them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, another one they interviewed. So his sister had said during the trial that he never showed any emotion. If something went wrong or if something didn't go his way or would upset him, he would just bottle it up. The parents were quite strict when they were growing up and would get the kids to stay in their room and study each afternoon. A score of 99% on a test would raise the question, what happened to the other 1% from the parents? So there's always that struggle, I guess, at never being good enough and whatnot. His mother also drank a lot and had unpredictable behavior that would sometimes result in her going into rages. But all the while, they would always regard Frankum, this is what they say, too highly, allowing him to think he was more capable than what he was. And what you should always, you should always instill confidence in your children and shit. It's got to be realism, like if I sang to my mother and she's like, oh, you're a beautiful baby. And I'm like, you're setting him up for failure in one way. Do you know what I mean?
That's my dad, though. My dad is like, we cannot do any wrong in his eyes. Like, everything that we do is perfection. And same with the grandchildren, like, he's just like, oh, on my worst days, like, geez, you look pretty today, love.
Oh,
like, Dad, I look like shit. No, you don't. You're just stunning. Look at you. You're a picture.
That's nice, though, but not like he's saying, oh, yeah, you could definitely be in the Olympics and you're swimming around like a flounder fish, So another similarity to Bryant was his mother. In Bryant's case, it was the father, committed suicide 16 months prior to the massacre. Sure. And Frankum inherited $30,000, which he would spend on household items like stereos, couches and whatnot.
Guns.
Probably weapons, and also he spent a lot of money on the prostitutes. So one part of the investigation one part the investigation thought could have led to his mental anguish was that they thought he may have had homosexual tendencies, because he would pay the prostitutes to perform acts on him that would be considered homosexual, but it was always by women. So enjoyed a good pegging, I assume, you know, which doesn't mean he's gay. It's just 1991 being fucking assholes.
Yeah.
And it's another reason why fucking society has a lot to answer for. And I'm not saying this is an excuse by any means for what he did, but you know, like how when people feel they have to feel ashamed about their what gets them off, when it's stuff that's between consenting adults, you know, they're not hurting anybody and stuff like that, but they're taught to feel shame about it because what, you like to finger up the bum. Who gives a fuck? Anyway. So he was probably feeling shameful about the fact that he got off on that as well. That would be another thing that was his bugbear. And by this stage, his money was starting to run out. And the sex acts, which were an outlet for him, were now an outlet that he couldn't afford. So the month prior to the massacre, so that could have all been a build-up of this rage and shit within him. The month prior to the massacre, he had his knife sharpened professionally. And on the day of the sadistic crime, he caught the train to the Plaza and gave a chilling warning to the station guard, who he knew by name, that he should go home. And then he made his way to the cafe. So that was very similar to Bryant as well. Didn't he tell someone when he said
some cryptic
to
things,
the people in the car? Yeah. There's just so many similarities. It's quite kooky.
Yeah. It is almost a little bit like Bryant saw a recap of it on telly and went, and almost like modelled.
I can do this. Yeah.
Massacre off some of the things that happened.
It's bizarre. So the family, so it's all happened now. So that's the case and whatnot. Obviously, he couldn't be tried. He killed himself. So after the aftermath, the families of the victims were asked what they wanted to do with regards to commemorating their loved ones. And it was agreed that each year on the anniversary, there would be a remembrance ceremony at the Plaza, which they still do. There's a plaque out the front commemorating it, the victims who passed. The event would contribute to the gun reforms that eventually passed 5 years later in the aftermath of the Port Arthur massacre. So the talk of the gun reforms was sort of happening. This was a big stepping stone in it. Port Arthur was the...
I wonder if any of the stuff that happened in the US influenced our stance as well. Like, I can't think of the timeline specifically, and I know that the school massacre stuff.
Columbine.
Yeah, where was Columbine?
I think Columbine was probably I think it was either before or around the exact same time. So
yeah, I feel it was before Martin Bryant shooting, and then it was just another thing, another justification. It was after, was it? Stop it.
99, sorry.
So it wasn't the worst. Was it like there was others before that, right?
They would have had
just a really bad one.
I think it was the first school massacre by school students taking guns into their school and shooting schools out. I don't think it really sort of happened before that. There may have been a murder here and there, but and they probably would have had guns, gun reform massacres in America, but it just wasn't in the school system. Until the 99. So, and I don't want to say silver linings, but some nice things that came out of what happened on that day. Greg Reed was awarded the Star of Courage for the lives he saved that day.
Oh, bless his heart. He deserves that.
He does. So 50 rounds were emptied over 50 rounds were emptied during the massacre from the semi-automatic. And a lot more people could have died if it wasn't for Greg. And also the storekeepers that herded the customers up to the end of the store. Yeah. The college that Roberta attended, and this is the part I told you at the beginning that nearly brought me in tears while I was putting these notes down. The college that Roberta attended now has the annual Roberta Armstrong Scholarship Award. That's $25,000 and is announced every year at the awards night of the school. And up until recently, it was awarded by Roberta Bowie's parents. It's just tragic.
Yeah, that's so sad.
No. So that's the Strathfield Murders. Massacre.
It's a little bit of a downer, our true crimes, isn't it?
Well, they're never going to be...
like murder, and it's like,
they're never going to be a perky one, are they?
Culture. We finish our pop culture, we're like, let's keep drinking. Let's play some music.
I'm going to show you Eurovision again. Yeah, so no, it's terrible. And it's one that I remember watching on a TV special years ago, and just stuck with me, that whole scene where, so Roberta was the most brutal killing out of all of them, because he fucking stabbed her with a 50-centimeter knife over and over. It's very fucking sad.
I just think it's a piece of shit.
And no justice could really be served because he killed himself, which I just always think is the fucking coward's act. If you're going to do that shit and then kill yourself, just kill yourself first and save everyone the pain.
But what's justice really anyway when something like that has happened to a loved one? Do you ever really get justice? Do you know what I mean? Do you ever feel like it's something that you never recover from? So whether they die or whether they live or whether they're life in prison, I think even if you watch them, be murdered like through the corporal,
capital punishment.
Capital, I was going to say corporal punishment. That's something. Capital punishment. I'd have a glass of wine. Capital punishment. So
you're never going to feel.
It's never going to fix it.
It's never going to justify it and make you feel better. You're never going to feel better about it. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to our true crime tales. Tune in next week for our pop culture episode where we farewell an Aussie favourite, Neighbours, by sharing our favourite memories, the stars that found us out there, the amazing, unbelievable storylines, and everyone's best pooch pal, Bouncer.
Oh, Bouncer. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to all our socials at Stupid B Say What to get all the info on our future episodes, bonus Stupid Bitch content, and all the fun projects we have coming your way. Bye, Stupid Bitches.
Bye, Stupid Bitches.
Yeah, that stupid bitch. He's a stupid bitch. What a stupid bitch. That stupid bitch.